Wildcats to Weber State Weekly's football game day show. We're a member of the Big Sky Podcast Network. I'm your host, Colby Peterson. On the show with me today, former Weber State football coach and current high school football coach, Tom Stackruk. Loud, proud Wildcat. Tom, first time we've had the chance to chat Weber State football together on Weber State Weekly. So thanks for joining us, man. Yeah,
it's good to have you back. I know the road is taking you on a long travel, but it's good to have you back in the saddle again.
Yeah, no kidding. We got to our place, our new place, and it took us like a week and a half to get internet, which in the modern age feels like months. It just felt so long. And then finally they said, okay, internet's turned on. And so like, all right, we got some opportunities. We're going to crank out some Weber State content because a lot's been happening lately with football, volleyball. Soccer team is playing well right now. Ended up getting into the semifinals. So a lot of Wildcat sports going on. Plus Hoops is playing as we're recording this on Thursday night. Hoops are playing tonight against an exhibition against Cody Carlson's alma mater or former school. Concordia, St. Paul, right? I think that's what it's called. Anyway, a lot of stuff going on, but we're here to talk about football, Tom. That's what you know best. So let's do it. But before we get started, I just want to make sure that we encourage everybody to subscribe to the show, whether that's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find Weber State Weekly. We're also on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Twitter, one of the best places to interact with the Weber State Weekly team, especially on game day. And then we've got a Patreon. Part of being a patron to Weber State Weekly gets you access to our Slack channel. We've got a game day Slack channel for our patrons. Everybody gets to sit there and talk about what's going on the field. Sometimes people are there. Sometimes we have, patrons who are on the road and they're giving us live updates in there for those of us that didn't make the trip. So interesting place to be. And you can only get it if you go to patreon.com/Weber State Weekly and become a patron. So, good with that, Tom. Today's show, we're going to recap Weber State at Idaho State just a little bit, get some of your takes on that game. And then we're going to move on to the match at hand. Portland State coming to Ogden to take on the Wildcats. And then we'll take a fly around the sky. I'm going to get your takes and see, Tom, what you think about some of the matchups happening across the Big Sky. So, Tom, let's get started with this Weber State at Idaho State game that happened up in Pocatello over the weekend. Wildcats roll 40-17. It was a good matchup, good statement win from the Wildcats, one that they need to continue to build that resume for a case to get into the playoffs. And so, Tom, just kind of give me your initial reaction, kind of your initial takes on how that one ended up as the Wildcats get the dub in Pocatello.
I really kind of going back and watching the game. I really liked that quarterback play. I know that we had the pick six, but you watch the way that he started that game. The first play, Coach Hammer calls. It's the little play action rollout. He doesn't have anybody there, so he takes the deep over route. It's a safe throw. It's out of bounds, but the Idaho State covered it well. I think his second throw, he was going to get hit in the mouth, and they ran a little slant in behind, and he saw that linebacker coming downhill on him. He stood in there and threw the ball. And then his next play is a touchdown. The corner sits on it. The safety didn't get over. And there we are running deep for a touchdown. So, I thought he played really well. In the second half, there was a ball there. Man, we were about on the 25 going in. He had a little pressure from the left tackle. He just needed to shuffle his feet a little bit, set his feet, and then just drive that ball in there. And it would have been a pick six, but it ended up being an incompletion. So I thought he played well. I thought, to be honest with you, back at the Eastern Washington game, I still thought he was banged up a little bit. I thought he looked a little bit hurt, his legs and things, but it seems like he looked healthier on Saturday. And I guess, and the biggest thing, the last thing, I mean, you can't talk about the Idaho State game without talking about the kickoff return. That's just an awesome accomplishment. But it amazes me, and you being a smarter man than me, I'm watching that game. They punt to him. Shahid, he returns it about 25. Punts again, Fair catches it. They punt to him again. He rattles off another 25, 30. And then we go in at a half, and I'm thinking, hey, let's reevaluate this. Maybe let's not kick off to him. Let's not give him let's not give him a chance. He's a little faster in person than he was on film. and they kicked it to him. And, the coverage was so bad too, because they came down inside and the one defender dipped his head inside and Rashid was out the door and gone. And I'll tell you this, and this is a stat that's going to go unnoticed, but, when I looked up his name, Jack Kelly, number 51.
Yep.
He's at the top of the blocking and his guy comes downhill and he kind of misses his block. But the first thing he does is old Jack Kelly from Kearns High School. He puts his foot in the ground and he goes and finds work. And the guy that's coming over the top to make the tackle, he's the guy that has the last chance to make the tackle. Jack Kelly, a freshman from Kearns, makes that block. So there's a stat that's going to go unnoticed. But that's a heck of a football play. And I'm excited to see what kind of future he has with Weber State, being a freshman linebacker, again, a Utah kid. So I'll be watching for him. He's kind of got my attention on that one little special teams play.
Yeah, like you said, heads up play, and one that I think that probably most freshmen don't consider making. Like you said, maybe missed the initial block. Maybe Shahid's maybe starting to get a little bit behind him. All right, I'm going to give up. He didn't do that. And it made all the difference because Rashid Shaheed gets, like you said, out the door toward the bottom of the field. If you watch the play, and I'm sure you've seen it all over social media at this point, Wildcat fans, probably a dozen times at least. Once Shaheed gets down to the bottom of the field and he gets kind of past that initial wave, there is a huge amount of space available to him, and he just hits the jets. And then by the time he's to the 50, like, that's it, folks. Like, you're not going to get him. He's gone. And it's funny because the announcer goes, I think that's history, right? Like, yeah, that's history right there. And he threw it up. We got 7.
Hey, you know what? And I'm going to go way back in history. Here's a little history for you. So Weber State, and this will be, for the last 2 weeks, I've seen something that's made me so jealous. And Eastern Washington has one of them, and Idaho State has one of them. And I had to keep watching it and seeing it all the time. But they got one of those national championship banners, right? Eastern's got one, and Idaho State. Well, it's funny that the banner that Idaho State has is a direct reflection, kind of a favor that Weber State did for them, because that was in 1981. And Weber State was part of the first college overtime football game. And it was played at Idaho State, last game of the season. And Roger Ruzek hits I think a 50-yard field goal to send the game into overtime. And so it goes into 3 overtimes. Idaho State ends up winning. They're 6-1, so they get to go to the playoffs. But there's another special teams kind of history moment in that dome. That one didn't go in favor of Weber State like this one did, but there's a little history lesson for you.
Tom, last one I wanted to ask you, because I'm with you, man. I noticed that national championship banner up on the wall of Holt Arena the whole time. And it's just sort of like, man, how'd they get one? What the freak, man? Anyway.
But that's back in the day when you only had a few teams going into the playoffs, man. It was tough back in the day. Even when I played, they only took 16 teams. It was tough back then to get in.
Yeah, just to get in, because now 24, I believe, right?
Yeah, doesn't it fluctuate between 24 and 32? I'm not sure.
I don't know either, but a lot more either way, not 16, and that's for dang sure.
Yeah, I think you're right, 24.
But Tom, last thing I wanted to ask you about Idaho State, and then we'll flip the script and we'll start talking about Portland State and the match today, the game at Stewart Stadium. They did a lot of stuff with Creighton Cooper in this one. Actually ended up leading all rushers with like 64 yards. And so I wanted to ask you, as a coach, how sustainable do you think it is? I mean, people start to see they putting Cooper in like, okay, this is probably going to be some sort of like a run package of some sort of like Wildcat keeper. But I'm wondering, we know that Creighton Cooper, who is an alumnus of Lehigh High School, really good down there, had quite an arm, was pretty accurate. I'm wondering if this is the beginnings of maybe like the next Stephen Cantwell at Weber State, where we've got a guy who's getting training early on how to run with the ball and be effective. Plus, we already know that he's a good passer and an accurate passer. As he gets more reps and gets more time, junior, senior year, you've got a guy who can really hurt you. How sustainable are these run packages with Creighton Cooper? And do you see something more there for the future?
Yeah, well, I know Creighton. I had a chance to meet him actually at Lehigh High School at a basketball game. Bonneville was playing down there, and he is a big looking kid. He's a good looking kid. So he's not he's a linebacker playing quarterback to me when I saw him in person. So he's a big physical kid. And, it's going to be interesting how that evolves, right? Because at some point in time, defense are going to have to say, hey, he's running the football. We got to balance up the box. We've got to account for him. And it's going to be interesting to see what Coach Hammer comes up with as far as throwing the football and how that whole process is going to evolve and where he's going to fit in and how that's going to work. And I've watched him on film because, coaching at Bonneville, I've seen film on him scouting different teams that we play because they're both 5A schools. But yeah, he can sling it a little bit. Definitely he can sling it. So it's going to be interesting to see how he grows and develops and what we're going to be talking about down the road. And maybe in these next 3 games, what are we going to be talking about?
Yeah, because like you said, very physical runner, starting to really kind of, I think, get the hang of how to deal with some of these backers and guys in the Big Sky Conference and how to shake them, how to get that a little bit of extra yardage. And so that technique coupled with his experience at the quarterback position, I think it makes for a recipe that just really, and like you said, Tom, keeping the defenses honest because they have to account for him because they know he's a threat to run. That's been the primary role that he's played coming into those sets. And so the defense has to account for him. They have to, balance that out. And so I think that it creates an opportunity where Coach Matt Hammer then can kind of like I said, keep defenses honest and say, okay, we're going to have to commit a guy or two in the box. And that's one less guy or two that's going to be out floating around. And so you can really run some interesting routes, especially if he starts to use the arm a little bit more. And it starts to create a nightmare scenario for defenses because now they got to pick their poison. And the more that goes on, I think that it breeds success for the Wildcats on offense.
Yeah. And we need to continue to develop him because, if you're going to run the ball like they like to run the quarterback, you got to have another guy. You got to have another guy, right?
No, yeah. We learned that in 2017 when Stephen Cantwell got injured, right? Ends up getting hit as he goes out of bounds for Southern Utah. The Wildcats lose that game and really, really kind of hurt their prospects, but ended up getting redemption later in the playoffs against the T-Birds. But having that extra guy and the next man up in the event that somebody gets hurt on a run like that, really critical and difficult this year, I think, because there have been so many injuries. Colin Weiser's still recovering from a broken leg that he suffered at Cal Poly. Like you mentioned, Bronson Barron has had some injuries this year, been a little bit banged up. So a lot of injuries at the quarterback position for the Wildcats this year. So Tom, let's talk. Let's look forward a little bit, man. Let's talk about the Vikings making the trip down to Ogden. It's the first time the Wildcats have seen this team since 2017, where that one did not go in their favor. I think the Wildcats ended up winning that one 63-17 up at Hillsboro. So yeah, this will be the first time we've seen them in a while. And Portland State's kind of an interesting animal this year. They were kind of middling in a lot of ways. A team that the way I put it in the notes was they're a team who has beat who they should beat, and they've lost to who they should lose to, except for one team. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But first question here for you, Tom. Portland State's coming to Ogden at number 3 in the conference for passing offense. They've got a quarterback in Davis Alexander. He's a senior. And he's a big reason why. He's the number 2 spot in the conference right behind Eric Berrier, who we know is going to be, I think, definitely a Walter Payton Award finalist this year with as prolific as he's been. But Davis Alexander, no slouch in his own right, can really throw the ball well. You think that the Wildcats run kind of a similar formula against Alexander that they ran against Eric Berrier? I don't know. Like, how are you feeling about how this matchup is maybe a little bit different than what the Wildcats saw in Cheney against Berrier?
Well, I think we can't forget the one formula was the 3 fake punts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's 3 possessions that we stole from them, plus the 2 turnovers. So again, that's 5 possessions that their offense does not have the ball. The turnovers, depending when the turnovers happen. Yeah. So that's, are we going to run 3 fake punts on Saturday? I don't know. I don't know if we're not going to be in that situation where we think we have to steal those possessions. So that's one part of the formula. So I don't think that's going to transfer over. I think the other part of it too is, and you could talk to this maybe a little bit more, as far as running quarterbacks, right? The Eastern Washington quarterback. I mean, he gets out there, man, he's scary. He can throw it on the run. and he can put his foot in the ground and get going pretty darn fast downhill. So that puts a lot of pressure on the defense. You got to be disciplined and be in the right spot and keep your eyes on him for not only the pass or the run. Can't get too deep in your drop and all those type of things. So I don't know, what's your thoughts on him being able to scramble around back there and kind of make plays off script?
Yeah, I think so. I checked into the numbers because this was something that interested me. I was like, okay, we know Alexander can throw the ball. The numbers are there for him, but can he run? Like, what kind of running threat is he? And so I looked at some of his rush numbers this season, and there was one game where I can't remember which it was, but he had like 64 yards on the ground, which was like, oh, okay. You got a quarterback going for 64 yards. That's not nothing in a game. But most of his performances, he was between 10 and 20 yards, and his long was the majority of those yards. So it looks like there's maybe 1-2 plays a game where he kind of gets out of the pocket, maybe runs downfield because the look is there. And that seems to be the majority of what he does. I think that maybe the Wildcats learned a little bit from the way that they dealt with Barriere. It was clear that they wanted to commit to coverage and make sure that if he was going to throw the ball, it was going to be difficult, and then hope that the Wildcat pass rush could, pressure him enough to make mistakes or just, get him to throw the ball away and waste downs. I wonder, though, there were quite a number of plays like that where they committed to that strategy, and Barriere saw the opportunity in the middle of the field, which was basically empty, and said, I'm going to run for 10, 15 yards. And so I wonder in this case, if the Wildcats adjust that strategy a little bit and say, we're still going to commit to coverage because Alexander is such a prolific passer and he's got at least 3 guys out there. And we're going to talk about one of them here in a minute that can really catch the ball. I wonder if they commit maybe 1 or 2 less guys out there in coverage, just kind of see how it goes and keep the middle of the field clogged to kind of keep him contained. Because I think that if they can keep Alexander contained, the pass rush, I feel like the defensive line is coming on and has for the past few weeks. There's an opportunity then for the Wildcats to pressure him and make him throw into some of that coverage or just throw the ball away and waste it down. So we'll see what they learned from executing on that strategy against Barriere, because I think that there's a possibility that it could look similar, but we'll have to see what the wrinkle is.
Yeah, and I think kind of what you said, and I'll put it in Canadian terms, right? We're going to be on Saturday. We're going to be working with a sitting duck, and in Eastern Washington, we're working with a moving target because that kid was moving all over the place. So and I don't know if he's that type of quarterback that's just going to sit in there and start to feel the pressure of our D line. I think that's going to be the difference in the two quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But he can sling it because his numbers, they're not that far off,
Yeah, they're there.
So he can sling it and you can sling it flying around the pocket, or you can sling it sitting in the pocket. So either way, he's got some pretty impressive numbers.
Yeah. And so we talked about the fact that he's got some guys that he can sling it to. Davis Alexander has the opportunity to throw it to junior wide receiver Bo Kelly. He's been really good this season. The secondary has been asked to do some really tough assignments this season. Covering, this goes I think this is a little bit understated because of some of the problems that Idaho State has had at the quarterback position with Tyler Vanderwall going out and then them starting a true freshman in that game. But Tanner Connor at Idaho State is no slouch, a very dangerous target. And in the Big Sky Podcast Network, we had him ranked as the mid-season MVP in the spring because his impact with Vanderwall was so great. So we know that there have been a lot of opportunities for the Wildcat secondary to show their quality, and this is going to be another one. And so how do you think that, even though I think that a lot of these Portland State guys are not necessarily household names among Big Sky schools, nobody's really talking about Bo Kelly, but it's clear that he's obviously talented. And so with the things that the Wildcat secondary has been asked to do already this season, is this assignment any different? Or is it just business as usual? Let's cover these guys up and let's try and get some more picks.
Yeah. Well, I think this is kind of ties back into having Coach Anderson on the staff, and from the standpoint of, Coach Anderson being on the staff and Jay not being the defensive coordinator and maybe floating around a little bit more. And we all know that Jay played in the back end at the University of Utah.
Yep.
And the other guy in that back end that's helping and coaching and got a little bit of experience, guy named Coach Dyson. So he knows a little bit about playing in the back end, right?
Yeah.
So I think, between Coach Hill and Coach Dyson, maybe spending a little extra time on that this week, I think they're going to come up with something and some sort of plan and being able for the players to be able to lean on their experience. And again, Coach Hill being freed up from being head coach responsibility to be floating around to certain areas on the practice field. I think most definitely he'll be spending some time over there and they'll come up with something, definitely.
Yeah. Another thing to talk about, the return of Desmond Williams, I think, has been a really big factor in the performances that the secondary has put out there. Having him back out there at safety, I think, has made a huge difference in the way that quarterbacks are throwing, because they know the threat that he is to intercept the ball, or just, the opportunities that he has and the speed that he has to stay in coverage, to not get burned. It's just...
I know we talk about turnovers and where are the turnovers, but man, sometimes when you're good in the back end and people know it, they are careful with the football. I watched that Idaho State, man. They were careful where they were throwing that football.
Yeah.
And, maybe so, that's what happens when you're good in the back end and they know what you can do, and people are really, really careful with that football.
Yeah, I think that's the case. And we talked a little bit about on the show on Monday night about the fact that, you look at the interception numbers and it's like, well, where's Eddie Heckard? Because we know that Eddie is that talented. We know that I think I'm going to put it out there and say, I think he's an NFL caliber player. He's a guy who's definitely going to get a look and go into the draft. And I think that there's a good chance that he gets drafted based on, what Taron Johnson has done in the NFL with the Buffalo Bills. I think that, people look at Eddie Heckard and say, yep, this is another guy that we can do. But then you look at the numbers, you say, well, he's only got like 2 picks this season or whatever. Right. And it's like, yeah, but we asked this question on Monday night, is that because they know that if you throw it in that direction, you better be sure, because Eddie Heckard will get you. And if you make a mistake, he's going to burn you. And he's done it a few times this season. Right. And there have been opportunities where, I wasn't quite there, some drop passes, whatever. But is he so good that, like you said, Tom, quarterbacks are wary to even throw the ball in that direction, which shuts down that side of the field? Because usually Eddie is the one drawing the assignment of the best wideout that they have. Right. And so I wonder if that's a factor as well, that they're just very careful, not willing to throw the ball in that direction unless they're real sure. Right.
Definitely.
Speaking about defense, let's talk a little bit about junior defensive tackle VJ Malo for the Vikings. This guy has been an absolute monster, terrorizing quarterbacks. I think what I got in the notes here, Portland State is second in the conference, tied for second. It's a little bit of a log jam there. I think they've got 9 sacks this season. VJ Malo has 8 of those. So this guy is just an absolute monster, and he is getting to the quarterback and bringing him down. And so the O-line has had some struggles, but I think that they were working through some injuries and they've been getting better. And normally we've got All-Americans playing on the offensive line, right? That's a tradition at Weber State. That's a thing that goes on. Really good offensive line play. But man, they've got a monster coming their way in VJ Malo. And so how does the O-line need to operate in order to give Barron the time that he needs to work? Because I think we've seen that when Barron's got time to work, he can really make some things happen.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing, everyone sees the stat, sees that stat in the sacks, right? That's a problem, right?
Yeah.
But also with a guy like that, we'll have to watch is how often is he going to put us off script? So it's 1st and 10, and all of a sudden he's penetrating and he's putting us into a 2nd and 12, a 2nd and 13 or 14. It wasn't a sack, but it's that tackle behind the line of scrimmage or at the line of scrimmage. So it's not the sacks that are a problem, but it's going to be, is he going to put us off script in the run game? So I think, him being an inside guy, you can control that with your run game, a little bit of running to him and getting double teams with your center and guard. So that's one thing you can do. Protection wise, you could get some double teams on him with that. If you're going to keep the back in, that will help out being able to keep those inside guys, double teamed up on him and keep it nice and tight. And the other part of it too is, got to run the football, right? Slowing a guy down, getting off the ground, running the football, like I talked about being off script, but now if we're on script and now it's 2nd and 2, we're running the ball again and he's got to get off the ground and gets tired. That's a good way to slow a guy down too. So I think, not being in 3rd and long where he can put his ears back and say, here I come, but being in those great downs where you can call great plays, 2nd and medium, where it's a run, 6, play action. Stuff like that will help a lot, and sometimes, you just got to get tough, man.
Yeah.
Just got to get tough and raise up to the challenge, man. Get excited. This is a dude, man. We got to play against the dude and, let's erase him from the game and get going with that.
Yeah. So just looked up the stats on TFLs, leads the conference right now so he's got 14 solo tackles for loss, 6 assisted for 127 yards. That's an average of 17. It's just crazy.
Wow. So here's going back to the Bonneville Lakers taking on Tempview last week, right? And they got some pretty good D-line too, guys. So the Lakers, we tried to run some screens. That's another option too, right? Can run some screens against him and maybe that slow him down a little bit.
Yeah. And we saw, when they put Randall Johnson in the game, was it Eastern that they put him in? Anyway, when they put him in, they had some success doing just that, giving him quick opportunities to just get the ball out and just kind of roll with it. And it worked. And so definitely the screen pass like that, just kind of let the bubble just kind of float out there and see what's going to happen. There could be success there.
Right.
You talked a little bit about running the ball, Tom. And so I wanted to kind of ask what you thought here. So Portland State is at number 6 in the conference for pass defense, number 6 in the conference for rush defense. There are only 13 teams in the conference. So that's pretty much right down the middle. It's slightly above average in both of those on both sides of the ball for the defense. If you're Matt Hammer, if you're offensive coordinator Matt Hammer, which do you choose to take advantage of to move the chains?
Well, I think if we go back and look at all the games that we've won, okay, you go back and look at all the games we won, and I did this. This is an important stat. If you look at our rush yards versus our opponent's rush yards, we won that battle. When we win that battle, we've won every game except UC Davis. We were off by 15 yards. They outrushed us, or we outrushed them by 15 yards, and we still lost the game, right? Yeah. But all those other games, the games that we've won that rushing battle. We had more rushing yards than they did. So I'm thinking, that's where I'm going to go.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and run the ball, establish the run, and see what we can do there. That will get my play action going. That will sure up protection, because usually when you run play action, you get a little bit better protection. You know what I mean? You get that D line to hesitate for just a second, and sometimes you're moving that line of scrimmage just maybe 2 or 3 yards, so it takes those D linemen off their rush path. So that's I think, try and get up in there and see what kind of success we can have running the football.
Yeah.
And, and you got, sometimes we're running that football, of course you play with 5 linemen, but we got our one running back that's probably a biscuit away from playing some offensive line. So sometimes we're running the ball with 6 line guys. Cause that guy's, he's a big dude, man. He can create his own block, right?
Yeah, we had Chris Jackson on the show on Monday night. Chris is a big guy. I think Chris is a guy who could definitely, pick up some of those blocks and create those opportunities. But Chris is actually, and I like that you kind of went with the establishing the run, because I think I agree with you. If you can establish the run early, it creates opportunities for the passing game that weren't there before. Whereas if you're just throwing the ball, you can become one-dimensional, whereas the run game gives you the opportunity to become two-dimensional in a really interesting way. And so I agree. When the Wildcats run the ball well, They have a lot of success. When they don't run the ball well, they can struggle. So I'm agree with you, Tom. Get that out there. Continue to feed guys like Chris Jansen, our guy D-Mac, Dante McMillan. We've even seen some Damon Bankston. Let those guys get out there, man. Like, let's see them run. And when they have the chance, they can get out on the edge, or they can just go like Chris. He's going straight up the middle, man. And he is having a lot of success there. Just the touchdowns are piling up. And we talked to him on Monday about the fact that he's the short yardage situation guy. You need 3 yards, goal line situations, send in the battering ram. Chris is going to get it for you, So I think I agree with you. Get the run established early.
It would really suck tackling that guy. Tackling him one time's okay. Tackling him second time's okay. But come that fourth quarter, it's not fun anymore. Not fun anymore. So
he talked about that, right? He said that, the fact that his body type, guys get tired of having to bring him down because he's such a big guy and he's so powerful that, like you said, as time wears on, you get to that fourth quarter and they say, okay, we're going to send him again. They're just like, oh, they're going to send him again.
Yeah, and he's getting lathered up a little bit. He's getting excited. This is getting fun now, man.
Yeah, he's having success for sure. And it's good to see him. Yeah. Last question on this, Tom. Vikings have beat who they were supposed to beat, like we said at the start of this segment, and they've lost to who they're supposed to lose to, except for Idaho. They took the trip to Moscow and they ended up losing in the Kibbe Dome, which I don't think anybody expected them to lose. I think most people would say, yeah, Portland State should probably win that game, but they didn't. Right. What does that mean for the Wildcats coming in? Because that's a road game. They've done a pretty good job of taking care of business at home. But the road is where they've had some struggles. And so Vikings on the road, normally Stewart Stadium is a very difficult place to play football. Hasn't necessarily been so much this year, but normally it's a difficult place to win. With that kind of a history where they've struggled on the road, I mean, does it give the Wildcats an advantage or does it mean nothing?
Man, that's a good question. Of course, I mean, when you're at home, it's going to give you an advantage, right?
Yeah. You got the crowd on your side. It makes a difference.
Yeah. But, I think the other part too, is it's going to come down to is how excited are they to come here and play, and with their quarterback and they're having success on offense, I would say they're going to be a pretty motivated group to raise up to this challenge of playing against the Weber State defense, Yeah. Because it's fun, right? I mean, if you got a guy back there slinging around and maybe, record wise, maybe they haven't won as many games as they would like, but it's still fun when you're on offense and you're having success and scoring touchdowns and all those type of things. So I think, it comes down to, how anxious are they to show off their offense?
Yeah. Yeah. Because right now their offense, they're number 6 in the conference total offense, but the Wildcats coming in number 2 in the conference for defense. Yeah. So this is going to be something interesting. Looking at the passing numbers, their passing offense, number 3 in the conference, but the Wildcats, number 2 in the conference for pass defense. Yeah. So sort of, I think that to wrap this up, I think that what this matchup means is that unfortunately for the Vikings, the Wildcats are good at defending the things that they're good at. Mm-hmm. And I think that the Vikings are middling at defending the things that the Wildcats are good at. So we talked about the run game, right? They're just kind of like, they're just number 6. It's just kind of middle of the road. It's not great. It's not terrible. It just is what it is. That's an opportunity. Whereas the Vikings are very good at throwing the ball. We've seen that. But the Wildcats are very good at defending that pass. And so it creates challenges for them to get going what they like to get going. Meanwhile, the Wildcats are able to have some success doing the things that they like to do on the other side of the ball.
But if you look at it too, it depends how you look at it too, right? Because if you're looking at yards per game, they're at number 9. But if you look at it yards per carry, they're up at number 6. Mm. So there's kind of 2 different ways to look at it. And the other part of it too is Idaho State averaged on the ground 124 yards. I think that's what they averaged, right? 124 yards. How many yards did they get against the Wildcat defense?
24.
24.
That's it.
So I'm not real good at math. So Portland State averages 4 more than Idaho State. So does that mean Portland State's going to rush for 26 yards? We'll see, right?
Yeah, right. Because it's there. Like you said, they're just averaging. I mean, it's 124.9 for Idaho State for the Bengals. Portland State only averaging 128.3 yards per game on the ground, and so 26 is fair.
Yeah, I think it's pretty hard to win any football game when you rush for 24 yards.
Yeah, I don't care. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's like what we just talked about, right? Where it's like you establish the run early, it opens the door for lots of other things. You know, if you're just passing all the time, you can have a success, but it kind of makes you one-dimensional. And when the team figures out and makes adjustments, takes that away. Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
All right, Tom. Looking forward to the Portland State game. I think that the kick is at 1:00 local time, so that means that they'll be out there tailgating at 11 a.m. up at Stewart Stadium. So be sure to go up and check that out. Shout out to our guys out there, everybody who's been showing up this season, tailgating out there. It's been a really fun scene this year. So go up there and be a part of it because it's a ton of fun up there. And now we're going to talk about the sky. We're going to fly around the sky real quick. Tom, I'm going to get your takes. So looking at some of these matchups that are going to be happening across the conference. First one up, Montana is taking the trip down to Greeley. They're going to be taking on Northern Colorado. What do you got on this one, Tom? Montana's been a little bit beat up, had some struggles of late, just barely beating Southern Utah last weekend. Northern Colorado has just been kind of meh in Coach Ed McCaffrey's first season. I think that's to be expected. Who are you taking in this one?
Oh, easy. Montana. Wake up call from last week of playing a maybe lesser team and not being ready to play. I'm sure Bobby Hawk will have those guys ready to play. No brainer. Montana. Yep.
I think I'm with you too. I think I'm going to take the Grizz on the road here just because Northern Colorado was up against, I'm pretty sure it was Northern Colorado, was up against Montana State, I think a couple of weeks ago. And, you know, they got shut down. They didn't look good against that defense. Montana State has a great defense, as we found out on October 15th. Montana is no different. They also have a great defense, a lot of takeaways, just very, very capable. The problem for them has been offense. But I think that they get it done. I think they find enough points to put the Bears away at home.
Yeah.
Next up, Idaho State is taking the trip to Provo. They're going to be playing BYU in a body bag game. What you got in this one, Tom?
Let's go Cougs, man. Here we go.
Yeah, it's the Cougs for me. Yeah, it's like this is a money game. Idaho State has not been strong, but they got to pay the bills, and so it is what it is. They're going to play the Cougars. They're going to lose, but they're going to get paid. So whatever.
Got to pay for that new facility they're getting. The upgrades.
Yeah, they're going to upgrade Holt Arena. The potato cellar is what I've been calling it on social.
Yeah.
Garbage facility. All right. UC Davis is going to be taking the trip, I guess, technically up to Flagstaff, Arizona, which is just 6,400 feet. This is a weird one, man. Playing up at the Sky Dome is weird. Wildcats have had struggles up there. NAU is just a weird place to play football. And Davis has had some struggles of late. They ended up losing to Idaho State in Pocatello. That's why we were a little bit nervous about the game last week with the Wildcats making that same trip, but no problem there. So who do you got in this one? This one's a little bit weird. Davis or the Lumberjacks, NAU?
Man, I'm going to go with Davis.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Davis just from a coaching standpoint. You know, the head coach has got a lot of experience, that Boise experience. And
true.
I think I'm going to go with Davis, you know, and their offense is one of the top offenses, right? So as far as rushing, they're able to run the football. And so I'm going to lean that way.
Yeah.
And NAU looking at the numbers here isn't great at defending the run either.
Yeah. And that's the thing I think that sticks out most to me, Tom, is the fact that Alonzo Gilliam is an absolute monster. We've seen him. We saw him in the spring. We saw him again this season. The guy can run the ball. NAU has not been very good at defending that rush. And so I think when I look at that, I say, okay, you know, NAU currently 10th in the conference at defending the rush. And so it's just like, I think Alonzo Gilliam has a really good day. And like we talked about, when you're establishing the run and they can't stop you, you're going to get mowed down. Think about the last time NAU Wildcats had a really good rushing day against NAU. We absolutely clobbered them. I think Josh Davis went for like 400 yards in that game or something like that. It was insane. So I'm with you. I think that the Davis run is the difference in this one. I think we got one more. We got two more. This is the big one. This is going to be, I think, the game of the week for maybe across the country, because this is a big matchup. There may be some others, but this is in the Big Sky. This is the game. Montana State Bobcats taking the trip to Cheney to play the Eagles after a bye week. I think they both just came off of a bye week on the Inferno, on the red turf. Who are you taking on this one, Tom? This one, something else.
Yeah, I'm taking, I know I've been talking running the football and, all the positives about that, but I'm taking Eastern Washington for a quarterback that can get into trouble and turn something into a big play. When I watched that TV game against Montana and just seeing how his athleticism affected the game, right? And then I just think that's going to be the key. I mean, he is an athletic quarterback, and I think that's going to be the difference of him running around, being able to make a play when that pass rush. And I think Montana State has a pretty good front seven. From watching them play Weber State and holding us to 7 points, I think it was.
Yep.
I mean, they got a good front seven, but
certainly do.
Get that quarterback running around, making plays. I think that's going to be the difference.
Oh man, this is so hard for me because
on the road,
it's, and I think that, I don't know, because the Montana State of old, I would have expected Choate to lose this game, right? All things considered, I think Choate loses on the road because that's kind of what he does. Vegan has shown to be different. Vegan has shown that he's willing to go down to Ogden and win, which is something that hasn't happened. I think it hadn't happened in a while. Choate never beat Weber State, but Vegan gets it done in his first season. Plus you look at the pass defense, Montana State is the number one pass defense in the conference right now. They're allowing 10 yards fewer than Weber State, who is number 2. They're giving up only 155 yards a game through the air. And I think that number is going to come up a bit because Eric Barrier is Eric Barrier. But like you said, their front seven, we saw Daniel Hardy is a monster. Plus they've got Troy Anderson back there as well as a linebacker who can, he can stop the run. But at the same time, Montana State has a guy named Isaiah Fonse who is an animal. That guy, I mean, you saw there were a lot of plays where that guy just pushing guys off of him and just churning those legs and getting that extra yardage. So everything, I don't know, man, everything to me looks like Montana State should probably win this. They've got all the tools they need. They've got the pass rush. They've got the secondary. They've got the run game, and the run game, I think, is ultimately the way that the Wildcats end up beating Eastern Washington. And they also got the turnovers, man. Montana State's got 11 interceptions this season. And Eric Barrier has shown himself to be undisciplined at times with the football. And so everything is leading me to say that Montana State should be the winner in this game. But my heart wants to say that Eastern Washington wins. And I think that's where it goes. I think when it comes down to facts, I think Eastern Washington pulls it out. They right the ship after the bye week. They're ready and they get the dub. But man, that's a tough one.
It's going to be a fun game.
Yeah, this game is just
a fun game and be interesting. I think it's going to come down to the back end of Montana State. If they can hold up like Weber State's back end did, then Montana's going to win that game. But I don't know if they're as talented in the back end as Weber State is. I don't think they are. So,
final one this week. Tom, Cal Poly is taking the trip up to Sac State to take on the Hornets. Cal Poly has not been good this season. What do you got, man?
Sac State being ranked, got a lot to lose. They'll be motivated and ready to go. And it's a bit of a recruiting deal too, right? That's a big part of it also. So that's an easy one.
Yep. Sac State, I think, kind of on cruise control until the last game of the season. We'll have to make the trip down the causeway to Davis. That'll be a big game with national implications. But for right now, I think I agree with you. I think Sac State takes care of Poly. They've been bad. They're still working on stuff. Coach Bo Baldwin's first season down there. I don't expect them to win, and they probably won't.
Yeah. But I'll tell you this: it's an interesting about football as you look at the Montana, Southern Utah, right?
Yep.
But Montana have 12 penalties. They had 12 penalties. 5 that were deferred. So that's 17 penalties. They had 2 turnovers that equaled, I think, 6 or 9 points. So you start throwing that, I know me and you kind of look at the stats and, we see different teams play against us and kind of come up with a formula. But you start mixing in turnovers and penalties, that kind of levels the playing field pretty darn fast. So it'll be interesting to see how some of these games work out and if that's a big factor in any of those games. It almost got Montana.
Yeah, almost cost them.
Got Montana.
Oh, that would have cost them, I think, a playoff spot should they have lost that game to SUU up at Wash Grizz.
Yeah.
All right, man. So like we said, this Saturday, you're all getting ready for the game. We're going to be playing Portland State. Kick is at 1. If you're not in Ogden like me, you'll be watching the game on ESPN Plus, or you can listen to it on 103.1 The Wave. Hear the dulcet tones of Steve Klauke. And then next week, big one, man. Wildcats hit the road, head down to Southern Utah for what might be the last Beehive Bowl for a while. This will be the last season that Southern Utah is in the Big Sky Conference. They're making the change over to the WAC. And so as part of that, this will be probably the last one. And we'll see kind of how things shake out in the future. But Saturday, November 13th, Wildcats taking the trip down to Cedar City, 2 p.m. kick. Thank you. Not a 7 p.m. kick like we've seen in the past. I hate those, man. It's just the absolute worst. But yeah, that's totally a thing. That game will be on ESPN Plus, so I'll be watching it there. But Alumni is doing a tailgate down there, so go down there, check it out. It should be a good time hanging out with a lot of good folks. So that's the show, Tom. I think that went a lot longer than we anticipated, but a lot of good stuff here. So thanks for taking the time, man, to chat with me. You know where to find us, folks. WeberStateWeekly@gmail.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We've got the Patreon, and you can check out our blog at WeberStateWeekly.com. We'll wrap this one up like we usually do, Tom. I'll say Weber State.
Great.
Go Wildcats.